Okay, good morning, Year 8. I'm here to deliver for you your last couple of lessons on the Haitian Revolution. So obviously last week you had the work set by Mr. Morgan about the history of the Olympics. Today we're going to go back to finish off the Haitian Revolution. And next week you're going to have one last video to look at just to understand what happened at the very end of it. Okay. Now, if you just look very quickly then, so the title of today's lesson is Why Did Napoleon Invade to Turn Back the Clock in Saint-Domingue? So the Saint-Domingue is Haiti. So Napoleon Bonaparte, one of the most famous military leaders in history. He emerged as the leader of France's armies during the French Revolution. But Napoleon was someone who thought that lots of the ideas of the French Revolution had gone too far. So when we looked at the ideas of freedom and equality, especially, and Napoleon thought that lots of the ideas of the French Revolution had gone too far. And we saw that obviously last lesson, at the height of the French Revolution, the French government had actually abolished slavery. So as part of its belief in equality, and they said that slavery in all of France's colonies would become illegal, and that all of the slaves would become French citizens. And we saw they did that to persuade Toussaint to switch sides and fight for France against its enemies in Britain and Spain. But when Napoleon came to power, he didn't like that for reasons we'll look at today. So we're going to start off with looking at just a very famous quote from Napoleon, talking about Haiti and what had happened in its revolution. So we're going to think about a couple of questions to do with that. So Napoleon said in 1801 in a letter to one of his leading generals, the existence of a black republic is equally disturbing to the Spanish, the English, and the Americans. It is to the common advantage of all Europeans to destroy this rebellion of the blacks. Now, I'm going to think about two questions quickly. First of all, what do you think Napoleon meant when he described the idea of a black republic being disturbing? So why would he find the idea of a black republic disturbing? And secondly, why do you think he thought that other European countries like Spain and England and America would also be equally disturbed by the idea of a black republic? So have a little think about that to yourself a second to reread the quote. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, why would he find it disturbing? Well, I suppose if he doesn't believe in the ideas of equality and he has racist ideas, which he clearly does because he refers to the Haitian Revolution as the rebellion of the blacks. So again, we can see there's a racial hostility there. He's going to find the idea of a black republic, a black government with no monarchy, run by black people. He's going to find that disturbing because it goes against his kind of racist ideas. And why would the other European countries who also had colonies in the Caribbean, like Jamaica or Santo Domingo or Cuba, why would they find it disturbing? Well, obviously, they are worried that the example of Haiti being a black republic could become infectious and spread to their own islands and colonies and cause slave uprisings there. So Napoleon thought that Black Republic was disturbing to him, but also he thought that all Europeans should unite to crush it, because obviously he was worried that it would inspire similar rebellions in other slave colonies in the Caribbean and the New World. So we're going to look at three things today. We're going to just do a quick recap of the events in the Haitian Revolution leading up to Napoleon's decision to invade the island to try and bring back slavery. We're going to look at the main reasons why Napoleon decided to launch the invasion in 1801. And then we're going to look at the very end about what happened actually during the months after Napoleon invaded the island. In the final lesson next week, we'll be looking at how the Haitians were able to defeat Napoleon despite him being one of Europe's all-time greatest generals. Okay, so let's just start off with a quick recap of where we got up to so far. So we saw 1789, the French Revolution begins. So you get those ideas of equality, fraternity, liberty spreading throughout the world. And the year afterwards, when those ideas arrive in Saint-Domingue in Haiti, they lead to a civil war between the free coloreds on the island, like Raymond, and the white ruling class on the island. So remember, the free colours were those people that were either mixed race and free, or fully African former slaves who managed to free themselves through work, etc. And they obviously were the first people in Haiti to demand the rights that the French Revolution promised them before the black slaves did. And that battle between the free coloureds and the white slave owners created a space for the following year in 1791, the African slaves, who were at the bottom of the social hierarchy, beginning their own uprising. So that created an opportunity for them. So then you get this really intense rebellion that ends up being led by Toussaint Louverture to destroy slavery on the island. Now, we then saw a couple of years later that after France executed its king and became much more radical, the French Revolution really took off in a very dramatic direction. France went to war with its surrounding European neighbours, including Britain and France, and they decided to try and invade the island of Saint-Domingue/Haiti to weaken France. So they start sending weapons and soldiers to try and conquer the island on behalf of Britain and France. Now, we then saw last lesson that the French government sent a commissioner called Félicité Sonthonax, and he was sent to the island to basically save it from Britain and France. And he managed to convince the French government back in Paris to abolish slavery. Now, he did that, as we saw, for a mixture of idealistic reasons. So he'd been a member of the Society of the Friends of the Blacks, and he believed in kind of the idea of racial equality. But there were also practical reasons. We saw that the French realized that they would not be able to hold on to the island and resist Britain and Spain's invasions if they didn't get Toussaint and the rebellious slaves on side. So Sonthonax convinces the French government to get rid of slavery and therefore get the African slaves to switch sides and fight for France. And Toussaint responds to that. He responds to Sonthonax's offer by agreeing to become a French general and to fight for France. So having started the rebellion fighting against French white slave owners, he realizes that the French Revolution has kind of changed the French government, and now he wants to fight with them against Britain and Spain, which they then do. So for the next 3 years, Toussaint and Sonthonax, who is the leader of the French government in Haiti, they unite their forces to drive the British and the Spanish off the island. So they manage to defeat two of those really powerful European empires. Now, what then happens is there are 4 years of the island recovering, rebuilding. Toussaint becomes effective co-governor and commander of the island alongside Sonthonax. Eventually, he actually replaces Sonthonax for all intents and purposes and effectively becomes the kind of leader of Saint-Domingue and Haiti. But Toussaint at this point is still a French general. He's fought for France to defeat Britain and Spain. He still says that he is an ally of France's, that he is helping rebuild the colony on their behalf. Which gets us up to what we're going to look at today. So Toussaint, having rebuilt the island for 4 years then, after Napoleon comes to power in 1798, he then spends the next few years planning to send an army to invade Saint-Domingue, overthrow Toussaint, and restore slavery to the island. So he's not interested that Toussaint has helped rebuild this island on behalf of France. He wants to invade the island, get rid of Toussaint, and restore slavery. Now, you're going to look at some of the reasons why Napoleon decided to do that, because it does seem a bit counterintuitive, right? That Toussaint has been a loyal fighter for France. He's helped hold on to the colony on France's behalf against Britain and Spain. He's a sort of great, inspiring general. But why did Napoleon decide to invade the island to overthrow him anyway? Now, you're going to read about these, but I'm just going to go through a couple of them very briefly, just so when you're reading the worksheet, it will make more sense. Now, a few things happened. One of the first things was that Toussaint created a constitution for the island. Now, a constitution is basically just like a list of rules for how to run your government. And the reason why Napoleon was angry about that is it suggested to him that Toussaint was planning to make Saint-Domingue/Haiti an independent country, to take it out of France's empire. Now, Toussaint said that wasn't the case, that he was just creating a model for how to run the colony on France's behalf. But Napoleon took that as a warning that Toussaint was planning at some point to make the island independent. Now, another big reason why Napoleon decided to invade the island was that a lot of his leading advisors had actually been slave owners on the island, and they kind of advised him that the only way that he could restore the island to being profitable, to make money for France through its sugar and its coffee, was to bring back slavery. And that included Napoleon's wife. Napoleon's wife had been a plantation owner in Saint-Domingue. So he's surrounded by these racist advisors, and they convince him that to make the island fully profitable for France, he has to invade the island and bring back slavery. And they also obviously fill him with a lot of his ideas about seeing black people as inferior, etc., which meant that he didn't think that they could have independence and be free and equal. Another big thing, Napoleon wanted the island to be a base to build France's empire in the Caribbean. So he's at war with Britain and Spain at this point. He thought that Saint-Domingue could be like a launching pad for conquering some of the surrounding colonies like Jamaica and Barbados and Cuba. So he wanted to conquer the island and then use it as a launch pad to attack Britain, especially his colonies and the rest of the island. Toussaint also made Napoleon quite suspicious about what his intentions were, because remember, Saint-Domingue was the western half of the island here, and in 1801, Toussaint invaded the eastern half, which had previously been owned by Spain, and united it into a single island. So Napoleon thought that was a sign that of Toussaint's growing ambitions, and that he thought that this was making Toussaint more of a threat and more dangerous and more powerful, and that if he didn't strike now, it might be harder later, because Toussaint was kind of building up his own sort of mini empire in the Caribbean. All that. That's how Napoleon saw it. Another reason he decided to launch the invasion when he did was he got Britain to sign a peace treaty with him in 1802. And that meant that he could get an army across the Atlantic to the island without it being sunk. So what Napoleon was worried about before, which is why he didn't launch the invasion earlier, is he thought that if Britain and France were still at war and he sent a big army on its ships to conquer the island, there would be a risk that Britain would sink that navy and that army before it could even get to the island. He kind of persuades Britain to sign a peace treaty, and he also persuades them to let him invade Haiti because, as we saw in that opening quote, he knows that Britain is as fearful of Toussaint's example as all the other European slave owners, that they kind of want Napoleon to go and crush Toussaint's revolution because they are worried that he is going to spread, obviously, revolution to the other slave colonies in places like Jamaica, which Britain owned. So that was another one. And finally, final big reason why Napoleon decided to invade is he knew that Toussaint was trading sugar for guns with France's enemies. So Toussaint had begun trading sugar with Britain and America in exchange for gunpowder and weapons. So he was trading with British and American smugglers to try and build up his arms base. And obviously, Napoleon was worried that the longer he left it, the more Toussaint would be able to build up his forces, buy bigger weapons, etc., and the harder it would be to reconquer the island. Okay, so that's kind of like an overview of the main reasons why Napoleon invaded. Now, you've only got one thing you really need to do for this week, which is I'll show you the worksheet quickly. You've got this worksheet, and you've got 3 tasks. Oops, sorry, let me get that one off. Right, you've got this worksheet with 3 tasks. You've got 3, one with the invasion of Saint-Domingue. Some of them are to do with Napoleon's own needs, and some of them are to do with fear of Toussaint's growing power. Now, all you need to do is you've got 4 questions here, which I'd like you to answer in full sentences. So you can either type that, send it to your teacher, or you can handwrite it, do it that way. You've then got to categorize the 6 reasons. So which 3 do you think are examples of reasons to do with Napoleon's needs for invading the island, and which of them were to do with fear of Toussaint's growing power? And then finally, I would like you to write a paragraph at the end, which is right. So you've looked at the main reasons why Napoleon ordered the invasion. So for number 3, I want you to tell me, right, out of these main reasons, what do you think were the most important ones that led to Napoleon ordering the invasion? So you decide which couple of factors were the most important for convincing Napoleon to invade the island? And can you explain why? So maybe 5 or 6 sentences. Why do you think Napoleon decided to order that invasion? Okay. And also make sure there is a quiz attached, which you need to do as well. And just to finish off then, so once you've done that worksheet, you also need to watch, there's a couple of little short videos below, so make sure to watch those. Now, we'll look at this more next week, but when Napoleon invaded the island at first, there was actually there was actually not as much resistance as you would expect to it. And there were 2 main reasons for that. The first one was that many people in Saint-Domingue were not happy with the limited freedoms that Toussaint had given them. So although Toussaint had gotten rid of slavery after becoming the governor of the island, he had forced many of the former slaves to go and work on the plantations for a wage, although a very poor one. And the reason he did that was he thought that in order to save the island from a French invasion, he had to make it profitable to show France that it could still be a profitable colony whilst not having slavery. And he obviously also needed to gain as much sugar as he could to then trade it for better weapons and ammunition. But it meant that many of the former slaves were not willing to sort of fight and die for him because they weren't happy with the kind of freedom that Toussaint had given them after becoming the leader of the island. The other big thing was that the French convinced many of Toussaint's officers that the invasion was about getting rid of Toussaint, not about bringing back slavery. So if the French had said from the start, right, we're invading to bring back slavery, there would have been a lot more resistance. But at first, at least, they tried to pretend that wasn't the case. We'll go through that at the start of next lesson. Okay, so you've got then 3 things you need to do. You need to complete the worksheet, you doing those 3 tasks. You need to complete the quiz, which is set on Show My Homework. And you also need to watch the 2 videos, which first follow this one in the playlist. There's 2 very short videos. Watch those because you'll be able to make much more sense of the lesson, okay? So you need to get that completed Year 8 and send it to your teachers when it's finished. And I look forward to giving you your final lesson of the year next week, okay?